Hey friends, this is an interview that I recorded a few months ago with pastor, chaplain friend Andriy Zalishuk. I've known him for quite a few years here in Ukraine. He's pastor of a church, but in the last few years he's been focusing a lot more of his time on chaplain ministries, and so I thought I would sit down with him and talk with him about his experience as a chaplain. So I hope that this will be enlightening to you and hopefully give you a little insight on some of the difficulties of life and ministry here in Ukraine.
I was a normal, regular Baptist pastor for a small church for many years, actually, so being back in 2000. And after graduating from the seminary, and I never thought of serving the military. I was doing kind of a pastoral work.
Busy with the regular.
Yeah, I was working on a pastoral, and again, parallel to my pastoral stuff. I was working KTS at Pastoral Leadership Program, and this is our Ukraine needs good pastors, and will always do. And certainly, like for everyone, probably this big war back in 2022 was a shock. Actually, the war started far before that, is back in 2014, but it was kind of a far away in the east, and limited number of people were affected by the war relatively, but when this war started, actually, I was wakened by missiles intercepted right above our house, and you would see them in the air. I could see fighters flying, and that's how the story started. And we lived on the left bank of Kiev. At that time, there was no kind of communication between bridges. For some reason, were closed, and Russians kept advancing. When they stopped at Irpin, and our soldiers, military destroyed the bridge, and they stopped, but they started spreading toward Brovary, and actually the only way to kind of leave Kiev was need to cross the river.
Right.
It was at where is that?
Because they were coming from the northeast into Kiev.
Yeah, but I know they were moving toward Dnieper and basically trying to approach in even Borispol. And the closest dam, where it was, I forgot. But again, after a couple of weeks staying here in Kiev, collected a group of people, and one of our students invited to Khmelnytsk region. So, and after we returned from Khmelnytsk region in May 2022, God gave me opportunity to serve quite a bit, traveling with humanitarian aid, helping refugees. And there, probably first time this thought came to my mind, and when I started seeing this destroyed Nikolaev, at that time or later, Kherson was freed. I was in Kharkiv region, in Balakleya, actually, when civilians were not yet permitted to return, and we saw it like
just right after the liberation.
Yeah, right after the liberation, and we were traveling there, and in front of us, seeing Russian tanks being transported into Ukrainian and captured of that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, all this picture of now we kind of got used to it. That time, with this hundreds and thousands of people fleeing their homes, younger and older, especially older.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I see the lady from Bakhmut, and within this humanitarian aid mission, I came to Bakhmut a couple of times, the time when I could.
Mm-hmm.
And like lady in her 70s or 80s, and now she, as a refugee, goes to her church. She's not a believer, but she's getting this and that help, or maybe some emotional support. She used to live in a apartment building, and the building literally does not exist anymore. It's not that the windows are broken or doors are, it's just, destroyed to the ground.
It's rubble.
And her son fought in Ukrainian army, was killed in action. Now this lady, I mean, what she can do? She cannot buy a building. She cannot build a building. And she still have some life to live.
Right.
And then another thought came to my mind: if not Ukrainian army, not Ukrainian soldiers or volunteers who fought like territorial defense forces, it wouldn't be just Kharkiv region or Donetsk region or Lugansk region. It would be all over Ukraine.
Yeah.
And this is probably first time I started thinking about it. Maybe I can do something for the military. Anyway, just as a Christian, as a pastor, as someone with theological education. And it is somewhere at that time where this guy on the flag, Igor Bondarenko, actually our former student, well, not former, well, he's missing in action now, so I know how to name his status, but he was actually conscripted to army while being an active student, called me, and actually we didn't have kind of a really close relationship with him. Just a student. I was assistant director or program director at that time. And this is the question he asked me. Okay, being conscripted into paratroopers, and there is a good chance that, well, it's not engineering forces. It's kind of probably will be killing people. Will I be able to become or to be a pastor after war? Because he was assistant pastor before the war, and when he was conscripted, he was assistant pastor, and he was pastor first in Lugansk region. Now he was assistant pastor in Lviv Oblast.
But that was the calling that he felt in his life to pastoral ministry.
Yeah, actually. And again, he was former. I didn't know that he actually, when I was talking to him, that he was former drug addict, and he came to rise through rehab center.
Yes.
But I used this illustration. I said, I don't know. Actually, your question is, I never thought of this question, but here is, I said, okay, we have rehab centers in churches. And many former drug addicts or guys like I was substance addiction, they came to Christ and their life changed so dramatically that without him telling you that he is former drug addict, you would never guess that he used to be one. And I say, okay, and oftentimes, who leads this rehab center?
Right.
Former drug addict, because he knows what is addiction. He knows what the depths of this sinful and painful condition, not from a book. He lived in that situation, and he knows Christ, and he knows the freedom that Christ gives. And when the war is over, and again, at that time, I was barely thinking what I can do, because army and me, it's like two separate. Also, although I served in a obligatory
Service, yeah.
service during
Soviet time.
and there's another story attached to it, because that story showed me that God's work is real and working under difficult circumstances. And this is one of the reasons, probably major reasons, why I became pastors, because he proved that he's real, and I'm just a regular person. And I said, okay, me, totally civilian pastor, and you, someone who lived through all these challenges of military service, and who knows what is heat, who knows what is cold, who knows what is all this blood, and you talking to them and me talking to them about Christ, whose gospel or gospel presentation would be more close to them, more real to them, mine or yours? I said, I think yours will. And so I think God willing, you'll be able to serve. Unfortunately, this guy now, since May 2024, is missing in action, which means that most likely he's dead. But now we can serve his family.
But so it was, that conversation with him was kind of when you first started work by ministering through that soldiers as a chaplain.
Right. And then God gave me opportunity with our senior chaplain of Kiev and Kiev Oblast, went to a military hospital for a week. And I served there for a week, and then started building, seeing new opportunities. One trip, another trip, and probably since summer 2023, at least 1 week a month, I'm somewhere else. Although, like, last month was, still need to recover. Out of 8 weeks, 6 weeks I was somewhere else. Like, I'm on active duty.
And you still have your church here.
Church, right? Church and job and also, like, because of, like, rocket was intercepted real close to my building, and another blast. We don't live there in
Your church building.
in church building in my house,
And your house.
and yeah,
As I knew about your church building, you had one, 5 meters from your church or something like that. I mean, it was
no, it's 5. If 5, we wouldn't have a church. It was maybe 25.
yeah. Well, I saw the hole. It was a very large hole. Did they fill it back up?
Yeah. So we don't live in our house for a half a year, but still we try to rebuild, repair. But even with this many things, you see, like we go to military hospitals. We go to actual, like, active military units, and God gave me. It's another thing that during a chaplaincy education or program, God gave me to be part of. I got to know a family couple from Kryvyi whose son was serving in one of the units, like storm units or whatever you call it, and was wounded, and they started visiting particular these guys where they live, and I my first trip, I would probably never forget it. Oh, we lived with these guys for several days. It was winter somewhere before New Year back in 2023. With these guys was this kind of a funny and very unusual. When I slept on somebody's bed, portable bed, and around me machine guns, like grenades, hand grenades on for pastor, kind of a thermal environment. Really. And I still have pictures of was this guys with their helmets and armor suits and all of that stuff, and they would at that time they would normally work. At that time they kind of spent 3-4 days in trenches, and then they return and they sleep, kind of recover, and they go back, and we stayed in this place maybe like 15 kilometers from ground zero, really. And I remember talking with one guy who came as a volunteer, actually joined army as a volunteer. He was not drafted or was raped. And they were part of liberating Bucha and Irpin, and a good guy who shared Christ with him and his comrades. But I remember kind of like looking into his eyes, and I says, would you be this kind of volunteer, army volunteer again, if like was your experience, if we could kind of rewind, or was the word kind of return back into this 2022?
Yeah.
And now you have.
Would you do it all over again, basically?
Yeah, would you do it all over again? He said, I would probably, but I don't know. I didn't know that's kind of one-way road. And I returned home from that trip, and this guy from Kryvyi calls me in 2 or 3 days and said, this and this guy, I think his name was Anton. They were in a position and came a tank, Russian tank, came like right to them and shot straight into their trench. And basically even their reminders couldn't be collected.
Wow.
It was something. I sat and cried, and like I could see his face, and I know this guy's just yeah. So basically that time came realization that you can sit with young guy. There were other situations like that when we talked with one sergeant, different trip, couple days after return, guy calls me and says, doesn't that guy we met and talked and kind of was funny, and and trying to take care of his soldiers. And so he got under mortar shelling and he was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And this feeling of urgency, Christ, you can talk with someone who has to leave, it's not conversation is center for old people where they gradually die because of their aging people, because he's 20 plus years old or 30 plus years old. He has to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But this war can stop this life in any moment. So you have to share Christ.
How does that affect the spiritually? How does that affect those guys? I mean, obviously, the guys you're talking to, most of them are probably unbelievers, but there's some believers as well. But and they must live with that feeling of, I might die today or tomorrow. And what kind of spiritual implications does it have on how they live, how they think about themselves in the world?
Well, that's another part of why I continue this ministry. And because what I call it, dead eyes of living young people.
Mm-hmm.
The war is the war continues, and we stepped over this 3 years period.
Mm-hmm.
And these people daily see what human beings are not supposed to see at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even death, but there are different levels of death.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is one thing when somebody dies because of, let's say, disease, chronic disease and terminal disease. Well, it's all terrible.
Right.
Death is always terrible,
Right.
to start with. But it's always sad and agreeable. But when you see someone, and I mentioned in our previous conversation that when you're in the army, you have this, I'm not sure that I know proper words, but this brotherhood, specific brotherhood of people, camaraderie of people you see every morning, every day. He protects your back, you protect his back, and you kind of help one another to survive, literally survive. Not just come over through some instances, some challenges of life, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And you see your friend blown apart. Sometimes it happens on your right in front of you.
Mm.
And it destroys, like, everybody has his own system, how to say, like a framework for life, this values, how he views life, and how the life makes sense, how was the success of life,
Right.
to be successful in life, and war destroys it all.
Mm-hmm.
And even like death on once, many of them have families,
Right.
but war changes people fundamentally.
Mm.
It's like, why says to his husband, like, this man is a stranger now.
Mm.
It's not a guy I married,
Mm-hmm.
because he became totally different.
Right.
He doesn't love me, she thinks, but for him, her and their children may be one of the basic things that keeps him on this earth, that, motivates him to get up every morning, get his AK-74 or 47, I call this, and do what he's supposed to do. And there are some rules, norms, what to do with the military to keep their sanity with them. But we just cannot afford it. Like American Army, they stick to this that they need to recover. After maybe 3 months on a mission, they have to recover. Maybe half a year or 2 years. It's not a reality. I mean,
survival here.
For many of them, they dream of 2 weeks after 3 months of being on mission. They don't have it. And when you say, okay, Christ is the one, is, he himself said he's the truth and the way and the life. He gives life. He creates life. And for me, besides everything else, I also lead a prayer group in our church when pray for general things like our presidents or commanders, about like logistic, about medics, and we have long list of names. You pray for these people. And I try to stay in touch with this. And basically, Christ is their only hope. It's our only hope.
You talked about how this spiritually affects the soldiers. What about you? How does that change your perspective?
Well,
in ministry, maybe some things became more important, some things became less important, or what are the specific challenges?
It is challenging ministry, very stressful ministry. Oftentimes, I myself feel that I need recovery. Because just listening stories like I tell, one of those things that I discovered that for their life, they don't have many people just to share their stories. They won't tell their stories to their wives because to add terror to the thought of their terror. Their friends who stayed, who didn't join the army, they just don't understand their stories and try to, because those stories are stressful the least. Terrible. Usually they're terrible because they're normal about death and blood and all of that. And I noticed that when I say, okay, let's say priest or pastor, they're open to share with me. And the more I gain experience talking with them, and because now it's 2+ years for me. No, not 2+ years. It's almost 2 years, to be precise. I more and more understand them, their life, their challenges, their I know lots of things. And they're willing to talk. And my seminary education helps to. They have very difficult questions like, okay, you say God is love, but how about this? How about that? How about then?
They're not the regular questions that you get in a church or after a church service or something like
that.
Yeah.
No, for them, love and grace means something else. And God's still love. God is still grace and working, but it's different expression of love or different display of love. And as I start talking into certain directions, they start agree, yeah, sure, yeah, God is there, and because there are many instances in their life when they could have died and they didn't, and they can't explain why they didn't die.
Right.
Like a mortar shell hit right in front of them, stuck into and hit it was a kind of a pool of dirt, and the lead was not hard enough for that detonator to work, just stuck in the, why he's there, and there is a dry land over there, a meter apart, but it hit the dirt, and he's alive. And not even wounded, although in that case he would be just pieces of him all over the area. And but stories like this, they affect different ways. But also it puts me on my knees asking for God's strength. And there were times where I was thinking, and especially with very strange political situation, like, Lord, it seems that there is aggressor who attacked us, who invaded our countries, but now we're accused of being victims.
Or is it the victim is being accused of being the aggressor?
Or and
Well, one thing that I hear sometimes is people say that there's just really not a big difference between Ukraine and Russia. Why not just let them take some land? And how would you respond to something like that based on your perspective here?
Yeah, and in a sense, there is no big difference between rapist and a person being raped. They're both human beings. Just maybe different gender, but they're the same and probably live in the same country.
That's a very good illustration. Yeah.
Maybe in the same neighborhood. And so why we make all this fuss about this situation? But obviously there is substantial difference between these two. And in my case, it's more than just that, because I'm from a Christian family. I mean, from a Baptist family, because most of people, if you ask on the street if they're Christian, they would probably say, yes, we're Eastern Orthodox Christians. But what does it mean? It means that they were baptized in the childhood 2 times a year. They would probably go to a church as a good Christians 2 times a year. And that's about it, because their life is not different from the life of unbeliever. And I was raised during Soviet system and during Soviet rule, with all these principles that now are governed by Eastern Orthodox Kremlin Red Russia. And their leader, surprise, is KGB officer, who is obviously a good Christian and always been. He never changed. I mean,
because that's the other thing I hear sometimes too. So, well, what about Putin? He's supporting traditional morals, traditional family values, and things like that.
I think that
So how can we say
Hitler supported traditional values, I think. So he's a great guy. Why we make all this fuss about Nazis? And is the Bible about just traditional values, or there is something deeper? Are there morals, or even what does it mean to worship God? Remember this question that a woman at the well asked Jesus, okay, we're here worship at this mountain, and we Jews believe that it's correct to worship on that mountain. And what was the Christ's answer? That God
Worship the spirit and truth.
and what is the spirit?
Right.
It is a satanic spirit that runs Putin. This is one of the reasons why I'm continue this chaplaincy ministry, because I'm telling soldiers, okay, I'm pastor, I'm priest, but we are in the same boat. So whether sink or swim, and you're guys who defend our country with arms. I'm someone who wants to help you to stand, because otherwise this red plague, whatever title they have, and their head of their Orthodox Church blesses killing of innocent Ukrainians, their rockets, their missiles, hitting apartment buildings.
Well, what are the, as you see, what are the implications for the church in Ukraine? As far as if Russia is to take power, our Russia already has taken our territory where there are churches. What like right now compared to what the church has experienced right now, the freedoms they have right now. What would it look like if Russia did take your church? Take the territory where your church is.
Well, in my particular case, I would be probably among first people who would be literally killed. Because for me, it's not Russians, just Russians or Ukrainian. For me, this is the God whom they worship. And they're ready to support. I'm not, probably any church that support Putin. Unless they bless and pray for what they do and praise them for what they do. And there is simple statistics. Take the territories taken by Russia, like the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, and check how many non-Russian Orthodox churches are there. They're just simple numbers, and how thrive they are there. So basically, certainly our church is not ideal, but we enjoy the freedom. We enjoy the freedom we haven't had for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably never.
The kind of freedom that you have right now. Right?
Yes.
Right.
The only church that being under, so to say, oppression or suppression is Russian Orthodox. And it is not because they are Russian Orthodox, but because they support Putin. And it is like have enemy behind your back.
Right.
Is it normal? Because basically they share the same doctrines with Ukrainian Orthodox Church. It's still Orthodox Church.
Right. They're not being persecuted because of their religious tradition.
Yes.
Or no type of worship or confession of faith or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And many churches who used to be Russian Orthodox became Ukrainian Orthodox. They didn't change maybe just their papers,
right,
registration documents, and maybe language. Now they lead their services in Ukrainian language. But it's very strange that services in Ukraine, has to be conducted in Ukrainian, right? It's like in America, English is very strange language.
Yeah.
So, and you could be priest of Russian Orthodox Church, and I know such priests.
Mhm.
One day, and you say, okay, it's better, it's correct to support Ukraine.
Mhm.
Now you're still priest in the same position, just in Ukrainian.
It's still basically doing the same type of worship, liturgy, and everything. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe as a finish, you want to share with us just a couple ways that we can pray for you, for your church, for your ministry.
Yeah, for church is certainly asks a question about church at this time. There are good things about church. There are bad things about church. Good things. Many churches, they say, okay, this is not our war. And they try to live in different reality, as if there is no war in Ukraine. For me, this is not what Christ did when he served, when he lived on his earth. And he told us to be salt and light. He told us to cry with those who cry and rejoice with those who rejoice. And he was called, what? A friend of the sinners. Although he was model of righteousness. There are churches who actually pray for our army, for our defenders. And I'm sure that not everyone is called to kind of defend the country with kind of arms, with sort of actually is a military. But I believe that every Ukrainian Christian is called to pray for his country, for their defenders, and even for enemies, and even for Putin. To stop this senseless war. They have huge territories.
Right.
So this is what I say about church and to pray. Chaplains needs prayers because as a volunteer, basically just money for my living, I try to get from some sources. But I'm not paid for my pastoral ministry. I do some translations, and God kind of opens heart of certain people to kind of get something. But even for things like spiritual and emotional, they are chaplains in a sense. They're not people. What was the word? Like
Tip of the spear.
Spear.
Yeah.
And they don't have any medical protection, and like, okay, you collected all the stress. But I see that this is very blessed ministry, very needed ministry, and our country needs much more chaplains that we do have. So any help that God puts in your heart would be deeply appreciated.
Well, thank you for your ministry. Thank you for sharing with us about this. Let me then pray for you and
please.
for grace. Heavenly Father, we thank you